Welcome back to Echo Ridge and another episode here in our max difficulty achievement run. You're never going to believe this, but there's nothing going on with the colony that we have to fix today. Yeah, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of stuff. Let's get to it. First thing was I came over to Resin to do some updates and realized, well, they hadn't been breathing in some time. And you can see the carbon dioxide level hadn't made it all the way up to here. But it didn't make it up to there because there's a lot of carbon dioxide. No, they made it up to there because, well, there was no oxygen. And there was no oxygen because this pump was not running. And this pump was not running because this hydro sensor told it not to run. So I flipped it on. I'm making the mental note that eventually I have to make the condenser to take all this steam and turn it into oxygen. Right now we're at 75 kilos. If it gets above 150, these volcanoes will no longer erupt. Speaking of which, look at all this beautiful refined metal, huh? It just goes up and up, like every single rail is stacked. And that's because, once again, things were not working as they were supposed to be. Apparently, if the launch path is blocked for an interplanetary launcher, as it is when meteors and stuff coming down, and sometimes the tiles sit here instead of falling down, all the rad bolts bypass the launcher. So I haven't been sending metals for quite some time. For the simple reason, the launcher didn't have any rad bolts. I've also put a minor change into our refined metal rail system, which has been working out pretty well. Remember, all the metals get cooled by this system here, and then they float all the way up, and eventually we moved them to where they're also going to be responsible for keeping this entire top of the biome pretty chill. We did that because all the meteors were coming down and superheating all of the bunker tiles, which, you know, can cause some problems. Well, by the time they get done rotating through this area, they can be a lot warmer. So what I did is have them rotate in front of the Wheezeworts before they head back up into the interplanetary launcher. And while it's not too chilly here right now, because I just sort of implemented this system a little while ago after we had death and destruction raining down, which, by the way, I'm being told in the comments, that is caused from some of the refined metal meteor showers. Which sort of makes sense, I suppose, because the refined metal meteor showers are very valuable, so clay makes them hurt just a little bit more. Now, as long as I make sure that I have to put that 150 kilo steam protection in place, which I'm kind of hoping to hold out until all of this water is used up, Resin should be pretty much on autopilot. Now for our home planetoid of Tuxedo. The first thing we have is all 3 rockets have returned from their missions. Our drill cone is refilled with 1,000 kilos worth of diamond. We brought back 2 tons of uranium ore, some sulfur, some bleachstone, and some rust. And unfortunately, no artifact. Now, on the other 2 rockets, we added the artifact transport modules. But there isn't one here on the ESS Curly, but this isn't a big deal. Because if you remember, the ESS Curly is never going to be landing on a planetoid, other than our home planetoid, which is connected to what a lot of Navy or Coast Guard folks will tell you is shore power. So since we don't need the solar panel module here, in fact, we'll use the whole swap this module for a different module, we can put in one artifact transport module right here. So I'm going to be sending these rockets out pretty constantly in the next few episodes. The limiting factor on that is how fast we can collect the hydrogen. It wouldn't be so shabby, except I've got 1.7 tons worth of hydrogen in this debris, 1.5 tons here, and 1.4 tons here. Because the debris is sitting on insulated tiles, it really is taking its time. So I think I'm going to try to help that out by warming up the chamber just a little bit. So hopefully, once again, this hydrogen will melt. Because once it does, we'd have almost up to here in hydrogen, which would then turn on this hydro sensor and start refilling all of our rockets with the hydrogen fuel. And the next mission we're going to be working on by using those rockets is cosmic archaeology. We need to get 7 more terrestrial artifacts to hit the 10 requirement. One of those terrestrial artifacts is actually sitting here on Resin. And since there's a clearance of 43 tiles at this rocket platform, there's no reason why we can't land one of the rockets there to grab up this artifact and take it back to our home planetoid where our wonderful artifact analysis station is sitting. Speaking of which, it looks like I have a couple of artifacts that are ready to be placed in our wonderful little collection here. And now there's actually 2 more problems. The first one has to do with power. you can see that we're actually overloading the heavy watt wire, and that's because we're hitting over 20 kilowatts. This makes me a sad Echo, because this is the power grid. I don't want to go through the pain of actually replacing all that heavy watt wire with heavy watt conductive wire. Not only will it be expensive, being that the heavy watt conductive wire costs 100 kilos worth of a refined metal, so I don't think we even have enough quite yet, but it's also, quite frankly, just going to be a pain, because there's heavy watt wire all over this planetoid. Not to mention heavy watt wire, there's also heavy watt joint plates that would have to be replaced as well. So once I feel confident that we have enough refined metal, I'll be upgrading that as well. On the good news front, I did put in another system that you're going to like to see, and that is that we've connected all the media blasters up with rails and have automated the entire system. Sulfur here is continuously making a bunch of blast shots. The blast shots are going to be picked up by this auto sweeper and thrown on this conveyor loader. They then ride this rail where they do a 50-50 split, with half of them going all the way over to this blast shot maker and the other half going to these three. But the key in this system is we have a pair of conveyor rail element sensors who are keeping a lookout for blast shots. This one here, and then we have one over here. And basically what they're doing is seeing if these lines need more blast shots. This rail is sending out a red signal because there's no blast shots sitting on its rail. What happens with the automation is the conveyor rail sensor that is looking for blast shots will send out a red signal whenever there's not a blast shot sitting on its rail, which will then be flipped to a green signal by the NOT gate. Those signals come all the way back here to a buffer gate. And the reason why is because, just like you saw, whenever a blast shot passes by the rail, we want to make sure that the flicker doesn't turn off the blast shot maker. That's why we have the buffer gate here that says, hey, if you receive a green signal, keep sending the green signal for 200 seconds, which is plenty of time for one delivery of blast shots to make it past this point on the rail system so we can keep filling the lines up with blast shots. And as you just saw, a blast shot just passed it, yet we're still getting a green signal to the blast shot maker. Now what's going to happen is once this sensor detects blast shots sitting on it for more than 200 seconds, combined with this element sensor having a blast shot sitting on it for 200 seconds, this buffer gate will no longer be sending out a green signal, which will disable the blast shot maker, which is conveniently set on keep making cobalt blast shots forever. To return back to the power issue, the decision I've made until we have enough refined metal is just to turn off some of the power demand. We'll start by only emitting half the rad bolts, which will save us almost a kilowatt of power there. On top of that, I can disable oxalite production for a little while. That's also a heavier cost at 1.2 kilowatts. And just those two things alone have us sitting around 15 to 17 kilowatts. Now for the other problem today. Margaret, the moo cow, is mooted. Yes, we're getting even more moo puns today. And when you highlight over mooted, this critter needs a clear view of space in order to invite a friend to the asteroid. Well, we all want Margaret to have a friend. Unfortunately, I didn't know they'd actually have to be able to see the sky for them to be able to call their friends. So now I have a problem. How do we make it to where this gassy moo is not mooted without having to move this entire setup? The other problem is I don't exactly know how much visibility the moo cow needs. We're also on a timeline because Margaret is 51 cycles old, and we need to replace Margaret before we don't have any moo cows to be able to call additional moo cows. I suppose I could move the moo cow setup over here and make this the natural gas collection point? Margaret, why are you making things so difficult on me? Some contingencies we'd have to think about if we do decide to move Margaret is gas grass only likes it between minus 273 and 75 degrees. So at no time can this be above 75. And everything around here is sitting around 100 degrees. So I suppose the first thing I can do is actually just make a few of these pipes here radiant, which will help cool this whole area off. And I suppose to get in here, they could either go up, but I need to put a door into place. And since I'm upgrading stuff, I might as well start using heavy watt conductive joint plates. You know, being the forward thinker that I am. This area will definitely not be able to be used as a junk gas drop-off because we're going to have to drywall this in now. But I can move all those junk gases to, say, over here. Well, maybe that's not a good idea because then they'd be superheated. Maybe if I put it down lower. Yeah, I'm sure nothing will go wrong with this right here. I also realized I still have not upgraded all this to supercoolant. Might as well do that now while we're sitting here. I've also decided not to put a door here. And we're going to make sure this door never gets opened. Just like before, the permissions do not allow the dupes to go through this. And the reason why is because we're going to be using this as our natural gas collection point. But it also means we need a way for the duplicates to get in here. And so I think the best method might be right through here. In fact, I'll even make it a little bit higher so there's less of a chance of natural gas escaping through here. As a minor note, whenever you're filling your cooling loops, make sure you're also not venting it off into the vacuum of space. It really cuts down on supercoolant wasting. Don't worry, Margaret, we're coming. The first step is going to be moving all this liquid chlorine. Now, I'm not excited about this process because you really need to make sure that it's not going through too hot of an area, not to mention there's a couple of pipes sitting in the way. So I'm going to try to use insulated ceramic to make sure that chlorine can stay cool, and so far we've used 12 tons. I don't even know if we're going to have enough to make it, and of course not. Well, time to make more ceramic. Now, a lot of my problems would end up going away if I would just break down and go over to the tree that gives out the iso resin and start that nonsense. But no one's got time for that, right? Oh no, it's happened again. It's happened again. Right now, the body temperature of these beta hives is at -3. If it gets beyond 0 degrees, the beta hives will die. The problem is when I was replacing the coolant loop, the coolant's very, very hot. So now I have to play this odd game of, can we get the coolant cooled down quick enough before the beta hives end up dying? The beta hives will produce more bees, but that's only if we can keep them alive. Just like this, each beta hive produced another bee. Fortunately, their body temperature comes out pretty cold, so even if the beta hives end up dying, we still have a little bit more time until the bee tinies end up expiring. Spoiler alert, the bee tinies didn't make it. The beta hives are now at -1.5 degrees. And then there was one beta hive. Hold on, buddy. You can do it. Just stay cold. I know a lot of you are screaming at me saying just use ice temperature shift plates, but I don't have any ice temperature shift plates, okay? The beta hive, in an act of desperation, because it's at -0.2 degrees, has given us one more bee tiny. But this bee tiny is at -13 and climbing pretty quickly. The supercoolant is down to 10-11 degrees. And there goes the beta hive. Come on, beta, hold on. -7. Okay, mistakes were made. That's all I can say. Mistakes were made. We've gotten it down to about 5 degrees. It was so close. Yeah, none of the heat from this area helped, but I knew the supercoolant would be able to override it. I mean, even the sleetweed's starting to grow again. What if I plant the beta hive like a Groot? Can I put it back in? Well, we do have 39 tons of enriched uranium right now, which means we have almost 4,000 cycles worth of fuel to sustain this nuclear reactor. Listen, if I'm playing this colony at cycle 5,756, we have much bigger problems than the fact that this reactor has no more fuel. Another problem I've discovered is the fact that this steam turbine is starting to overheat. It's not that the cooling loop isn't able to keep up, it's just the fact that this entire area is filled with carbon dioxide, and as we've talked about plenty of times, carbon dioxide is a horrible conductor. So I'm going to put an airflow tile right here, which is okay, because it's going to allow the oxygen that's being delivered to the outside of the nuclear reactor and this carbon dioxide to flow into this chamber. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did down here. We're just going to pump it out and filter it. We finally have the first little bits of liquid chlorine being delivered to the gas grass, which is going to be great. And what is going on with the illumination? The mesh tiles. Let me fix this 1 second. But as predicted, as soon as we got some of that carbon dioxide out of this area, the steam turbine is working much, much better. My only worry is, how long did it take me to notice that one? The light is looking much better. I realized I had forgotten to talk about the sun lamp in the last episode, and some of you might be wondering why I have it positioned like this. And the reason why is because the gas grasses require 10,000 lux. And the further you're away from the sun lamp, the less the lux gets. For instance, at this color tile, it's 8,000. At this one, it's 6,600. which I just realized our poor gassy moos are not going to be able to fly down in here and eat. So I need to get rid of some of these lights and replace them with ladders. I suppose we can put the milking station somewhere over here. This was my next attempt, but there's a problem with it as well. And that's the fact that they won't be able to get to these gas grasses over here. I'm going to try to lower their sun lamp by 1, but I'm not convinced that the Lux is going to be strong enough when it tries to reach out that wide. Alright, it looks like this will work. All the gas grasses are growing, which tells me they have enough illumination. Barely enough at these edges because it is just at 10,000 lux. All for the low cost of 960 watts. Now this alteration to the ranch has come with some trade-offs. We had to put a manual airlock here, and that way the duplicates could get to the ranch from this side because they don't have a way to get down through here. So whenever they need to access the bottom level, they're going to come through here. Whenever they're just accessing the top, they'll come from the other side. With all that being said, it's time to get a gassy moo in here. And I think Margaret is stuck on the insulated tile once again. Let's try deconstructing this. As soon as I deconstructed that tile, Margaret went right for the trap. Sometimes they're getting themselves stuck when there's one tile jutted out. So my guess is going to be they're going to constantly get stuck right here. Or possibly right here. In order to fix this, I'm going to move the milking station over to the right-hand side and put a small platform into place. And that way, we can at least get rid of one jutted out tile. Welcome to your new home, Margaret! Aren't you adorable? But now, importantly, we have to make sure that they can see the sky. So I'm going to put in 3 tiles here and 3 glass tiles here. Margaret is singing! Way to go, Margaret! Coming in hot! That looked like it stung a little bit. So is this really how we have to do this? That manually? The gassy moo comes shooting down like Superman, and then I gotta put an airborne critter trap. I guess I can just leave an airborne critter trap right here that'll always be waiting for a new gassy moo, and any gassy moo that's not brought to here, because there'll be 3 gassy moos max, can be brought to here, where they can, not eat wonderful gas grass. Some other interesting notes is this gassy moo is cycle 0 old. Marvin the moo cow has now been captured, so Eilhart scoops them up. The new airborne critter trap will be rearmed, so I suppose it's not as manual as I was thinking. So the next time they do their moo song, moo will come down and the trap will just grab another one. Now there was some questions in the comments asking why I'm doing this in the first place, and I don't have a great reason for you other than I thought it'd be fun to play with the moo cows. In the meantime, I've cleaned this whole area up, and I'm currently pumping out all the natural gas and everything else that was sitting in here. Right now, it's all being pumped to the vacuum of space because I was too lazy to make this work, but we could have definitely included it into our new system here, which works the same way the old system did. Once natural gas rises up to this point, this gas element sensor is going to detect it, and if it detects it for longer than 100 seconds, this gas pump is going to turn on. Once it does, it heads down to this filter, where if it's anything other than natural gas, it's going to be ejected to the vacuum of space. And yeah, because I let all that carbon dioxide flow out, it also means that natural gas is going to flow in. But it's not too big of a deal because natural gas is a better conductor than the horrible carbon dioxide, with a thermal conductivity of 0.03 and a specific heat capacity of 2.1. So literally almost double to carbon dioxide. Where did all this water come from? I don't even want to know. We're not going to investigate. Another couple of updates is that our geothermal power plant is still working like a charm. This ladder rung right here has sort of been my meter to tell me how much magma we've used. And so far, in the center, it's still sitting at 1,600 kilos. And if you look down here, it shows you that none of the magma has turned into igneous rock yet. This geothermal power is going to last forever. It kind of makes me want to expand it a little bit. Like I could open up the steam here and put more steam turbines over here. And by the way, after all these cycles, this hydrogen debris has still not budged. So I'm going to try one more solution and put in a nice metal tile and move all the debris to this point. So it'll actually be sitting on something that'll conduct its heat. With all that debris moved, you can see that there's 4.7 tons worth of hydrogen ice sitting on that tile. It might take it a little while, but I think that's going to be the solution. I know this was a little bit of a shorter episode, and it's because I had to fix the whole system that I built last episode. But it wasn't all moot, right? I mean, I destroyed the entire bee population here, upgraded this whole loop to supercoolant, made some updates here on Rikazan. In fact, we did have one meteor launch that came down. It did superheat everything for a little while, but so far, the metal seemed to have taken care of it. Now, it doesn't head into the interplanetary launcher as cool as I'd want. As you can see, this debris is sitting at 70 degrees. But I suspect after some time of allowing the Wheezeworts to do its business, that may help. I've also thought it might be helpful if I sort of put this whole place into insulated tiles, sort of making it its own room. But I'm going to keep an eye on it over the next, 50 to 100 cycles and see how the overall thermals look. Definitely not a problem for our main colony because we have that wonderful cooling loop keeping everything nice and chill. Oh, and it looks like our oxygen supply is ready for the floodgates to open up again, so we will open this door. In fact, it doesn't look like I'm going to need this door any longer, so we're just going to deconstruct it. And then as we need more water, I'll just end up taking off one layer at a time of the abyssalite, or just moving the pump around. Last thing I wanted to talk to you about was some upcoming channel changes. I am trying to find a permanent second game to add to the channel. Now, I know this is going to be a big deal, because whether anybody wants to admit it or not, I can't play Oxygen Not Included exclusively forever. And I think one of the mistakes I was making before is I was going from one game to another. Like I'd play RimWorld for a little bit, play some City Skylines, etc., etc. But in order to expand the audience the way I think would be beneficial is to add a permanent second game, at least for the foreseeable future, grow the audience that way before becoming an ONI first channel with a lot of variety games. So of course, and as always, I'd love to hear what you think about that in the comments below, whether that be about game suggestions or about this Moo-t episode. Now, before you start suggesting every game on your Steam wishlist, there's a couple of things to please keep in mind. Oxygen Not Included is already a niche title, so I would prefer the second game to be a little bit more of a mass market so that we can hit a larger audience. Another criteria is it's got to be somewhat related. I don't want all the folks who enjoy watching colony sims and strategy games to all of a sudden see me posting Call of Duty videos. That wouldn't make a lot of sense either. And then lastly, it has to be a game that I'm going to love for a very long time. Thank you for hanging out, and as always, please consider giving the video a like, and until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.